For decades, Hollywood whispered that Frank Herbert's sprawling sci-fi masterpiece was entirely unfilmable. It was considered a graveyard for visionary directors, a dense labyrinth of politics, ecology, and myth that defied the silver screen. Then Denis Villeneuve stepped into the deep desert. He didn't just break the curse, he redefined the modern science fiction epic for an entirely new generation. Released during a global pandemic, the first film defied the odds to pull in over $400 million and capture 6 Academy Awards. But the second chapter exploded into a genuine theatrical event, raking in over $700 million worldwide and securing a massive 92% on Rotten Tomatoes. Together, this two-part juggernaut has generated well over $1 billion, proving that audiences are still hungry for massive, uncompromising cinema. Yet beneath the breathtaking visual effects and the thundering Hans Zimmer score lies a deeply unsettling narrative trick. How exactly did a blockbuster franchise convince millions of cheering fans to root for the terrifying dawn of a galactic holy war? The answer lies in how the camera itself manipulates our understanding of destiny, power, and the ultimate cost of survival. Denis Villeneuve doesn't just adapt Frank Herbert's text. He actively weaponizes the blockbuster format to deconstruct the hero's journey. In a typical franchise, the protagonist's rise to power is a triumphant crowd pleaser. Here, Paul Atreides' ascension is framed as a catastrophic tragedy. Villeneuve and cinematographer Greg Fraser track this moral decay visually through light and shadow. Look at Paul and Caladan in the first film. He sits outdoors, bathed in soft, natural light, listening to his father. He is innocent, hesitant, and actively trying to avoid a bloody destiny. Now cut to his transformation in Part 2. Standing in a single, harsh beam of light inside a pitch-black cavern, he uses his prescience to terrify the Fremen into submission. The visual language darkens as his power grows, swallowing him in the shadows of the deep desert. Scale plays a massive role in mapping this shift. Across both films, scale emphasizes human insignificance in the face of nature and destiny. In Part 1, House Atreides soldiers stand in perfect formation, completely dwarfed by the brutalist, blocky underside of their transport ships. They are vulnerable, tiny pieces on a galactic chessboard. By Part 2, Paul and the Fremen flip this dynamic. They weaponize the impossible scale of Arrakis. When Paul successfully summons and rides the massive grandfather sandworm, he stands atop the beast as it plows through the desert. He isn't just surviving the environment anymore, he is commanding it. But Paul doesn't build this empire alone. The films fundamentally elevate the female perspective, turning the women of Dune into the narrative's true political anchors. Lady Jessica undergoes the most terrifying evolution in the franchise. In Part 1, she is a desperate, vulnerable mother. She stands outside the Gom Jabbar test, weeping and reciting the litany against fear out of sheer terror for her son's life. The turning point hits when she drinks the poisonous water of life. Surviving the venom and awakening the consciousness of her unborn daughter strips away her remaining humanity. She transforms into a Machiavellian architect of religious propaganda. Villeneuve frames her newly acquired power with chilling precision. Heavily tattooed and draped in dark robes, she uses her piercing blue eyes and Bene Gesserit conditioning to manipulate the vulnerable fundamentalists of the South. She stops being a mother and becomes the engine of a holy war. To truly understand the darkness consuming the Atreides, you have to look at their absolute opposite. Villeneuve makes a staggeringly bold stylistic choice to define the Harkonnens in Part 2, shooting their homeworld of G80 Prime in infrared black and white. This isn't just a neat visual trick. It instantly communicates a society entirely devoid of nature, color, and empathy. When the massive crowd fills the tiered gladiator arena under the black sun, raising their arms in a harsh, monochromatic void, it screams fascism. Feyd-Rautha stands alone in the center of the pale arena floor, stripped of any human warmth, looking like a predatory insect in his dark armor. This brutalist, alien aesthetic perfectly mirrors his psychopathy. It shows us the exact brand of ruthless cruelty Paul must adopt to defeat them. As Paul embraces this ruthlessness, the film needs a moral counterweight. That weight falls entirely on Chani. The films drastically alter her character from the novel, shifting her from a blindly devoted follower into the fierce, grounded voice of reason. In Part 1, she appears as an idealized, ethereal figure in Paul's dreams. But when they finally meet in the flesh, she hands him her crysknife, fully expecting him to die at the hands of Jameis. She is a cynical Fremen warrior who falls in love with Paul the Man, but watches in absolute horror as he allows himself to be transformed into Paul the Messiah. She recognizes the Bene Gesserit prophecy for exactly what it is, a calculated tool of enslavement. This choice reframes the entire climax. When Paul executes the Baron, forces the Emperor to submit, and coldly takes Princess Irulan as his wife, it isn't a victory lap. It is a heartbreaking betrayal. Chani walking alone across the vast sand dunes, turning her back on Paul's new empire to ride a sandworm into the deep desert, is the emotional core of the story. She chooses her independence over submitting to a false god. Every technical element in these films works to make Paul's tragic descent feel utterly inevitable. Hans Zimmer's score shifts from the sweeping, melancholic themes of House Atreides into aggressive, percussive war chants. The editing tightens, moving from the slow, deliberate world-building of Caladan to the rapid, violent strikes of the Fremen insurgency. Paul sheds his morality to protect his loved ones, but in doing so, he becomes the very monster his visions warned him about. Look at the final moments of Part 2. Paul orders the fanatical Fremen legions to attack the orbiting fleet. His face is illuminated by a warm, dark sunset. The boy who cried after taking his first human life in a ritual duel is gone. He actively triggers a galaxy-wide crusade, and the camera lingers on the absolute certainty in his eyes as the Holy War officially begins. Villeneuve meticulously builds a breathtaking science fiction epic, only to pull the rug out and reveal it was a cautionary tale about absolute power all along. For decades, Hollywood believed Herbert's universe was impossible to capture on screen, assuming the barrier was the sheer magnitude of its world. But Villeneuve proved the real challenge was always emotional, forcing us to watch a young man sacrifice his own humanity on the altar of survival. The lingering chill of this cinematic achievement isn't born from its sweeping vistas, but from the quiet, devastating realization that our saviors are often our most dangerous threats. With a third and final chapter arriving in late 2026 to adapt Dune Messiah, the brutal consequences of this crusade are about to bleed across the stars. The board is now set for an emperor who has conquered everything, yet entirely lost himself. Ultimately, we are left to wonder what remains of the boy who once dreamt of the ocean, now that he has drowned the galaxy in sand.